All right, let's get started. So welcome to the Wealthy Trustee Workshop, you guys, or the webinar, actually, the webinar. So tonight we're doing a webinar and I'm going to be teaching you guys how to set up a trust, how to build generational wealth with a trust. So I'm super excited that you guys are here because you guys are intentional about building wealth the right way. I see Allison is in the house. Hey, Allison. Hey, Brad. Hey, Danielle, Derek, Depot. Go, Howard, Carrie, Kim, Lisa, Mike, Sarah, Tia. Hi, everyone. So I'm super excited. We're going to dive right in, okay? So my name is Christina Yvette. I am a trust strategist, and I have been a trustee since 2015. And the way that I got into trust was by way of real estate. I actually created a real estate investment company and I started flipping houses. But before I started flipping houses, my mentor told me that I needed to put that house in a trust because I was young. I was 25 and I was at the point where I could have been sued because that house was going to go under construction. And you know how, anything could happen under construction, right? Like the roof could cave in, anything could happen. And so I didn't want to put myself in a position to where I could get sued and they could actually take the property from me. So that's why I decided to put that first property into a trust, and every single property after that has gone in a trust to protect my assets. So I'm going to teach you guys this whole process and we are going to dive right in. So allow me to share my screen here and let me know if you guys have any questions. Let's see here. Perfect. All right, so what is a trust entity? So a trust is a living, breathing entity just like you, just like me, okay? You and the trust can do anything that you can do. So if you could buy a house, a trust could buy a house. If you could build credit, a trust could build credit. So with a trust entity, like I said, it's a living, breathing entity. There's no restrictions. It's similar to, an LLC or a corporation, but it's private. You don't have to register it with the state. So with the trust, it's actually a contract. There are several different parties involved with the contract, and I'll go into that in just a minute. But with the contract, there's different parts, right? So the first part is the declaration. So with the declaration, you are actually declaring what the entity is and you are declaring what it is not. So you're declaring that it is a trust and a private contract, and you're declaring that it is not an LLC, it is not a corporation or a partnership or anything like that. So with this entity, like I said, there's several different parties involved, and let's get into it. So the first party is the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust. So another term for grantor you might hear is trustor or settler. And so that's the person who actually establishes the trust, and they establish the trust for someone else. Okay, so they're establishing it for the beneficiaries. The next person is the trustee. That's the person who is going to operate the trust on a day-to-day basis. So that's the person who is actually managing the assets of the trust. Okay. The next person or party involved is the beneficiary. That's the heir. That's the person who is actually going to receive the assets once the trust is terminated, okay? And you can actually operate a trust for anywhere between, 1 year at the very least, upwards of 100 years. So if you are intentional about building generational wealth, then you want to set that trust for 100 years. And then at that 100-year mark, you're going to get the trust renewed, okay? So the beneficiaries, what if that trust was terminated, they will receive the assets. So there's several different types of trust, okay? I'm going to briefly go through some different categories. The first one is express versus implied. So an express trust is a written trust. You definitely want your trust to be in black and white in contract versus an implied trust, which is an oral trust. The next category is statutory versus non-statutory. So a statutory trust is where it is actually registered with the state, okay? And so that becomes a public trust because since it's registered, people can see it in the public records, okay? With the statutory trust, usually attorneys will put the state statutes inside of the trust. So that means that the state can actually regulate that trust, and you're limited to only operate that trust in that state, okay? So there's a lot of limitations and disadvantages with a statutory trust. The other type of trust is a non-statutory trust. With that trust, it is not registered with your county or your state, so it remains private, and it doesn't have any of the state statutes or codes, which means that you can actually operate it in the entire nation, okay? So the next one is revocable versus irrevocable. So every single type of trust is going to fall within these two categories, okay? So with a revocable trust, that trust is where the grantor, which is the creator, we just learned that, has revocability, which means that they can revoke things. So if they were to put property into the trust, they could take it back. If they're setting up the trust, they can make amendments to it, they can decide to terminate it, or they can actually remove the trustees and the beneficiaries, okay? With a revocable trust, because it can be changed, it is not seen as a trust that is fully protected because creditors, one, can come after a revocable trust, and two, if that trust was to end up in court, then the judge can actually decide to pierce through that trust and force the trustee to bring the trust to court, okay? And that means that they're going to actually upload that trust into the public records. And so your trust is no longer private. Everyone's going to know the assets, the net worth, and who are the beneficiaries and trustees, okay? So on the contrary, you have an irrevocable trust. With an irrevocable trust, this trust is seen as bulletproof because it cannot be changed by the person who actually created it, okay? That person has what we call irrevocability. So they cannot make any changes. They have no power, no control, no benefit to the trust, and they cannot remove any of the beneficiaries, trustees, and they can't take back property. So because they have all of these limitations and restrictions, it's seen as a bulletproof trust, and creditors, one, cannot come after it, and two, it will not be pierced in court, like 99% of the time. Sometimes you do have rare cases, okay? So with that being said, you want a bulletproof trust. You want an irrevocable trust, okay? So the first thing that you have to do when you are actually creating a trust is you have to determine the type of trust you want. We just went through several different categories, right? So you want an express trust that's written. You want a non-statutory trust so that you can actually operate it in all 50 states if you wanted to, right? If you're in Georgia and you set up the trust in Georgia, but you wanted to buy property in Texas, you can do that, okay? And then you want an irrevocable trust so that it's protected from creditors because you're in the business of asset protection. And so that's like super important, okay? So when you are deciding the type of trust, that's what you want. You want an irrevocable trust. So now you have to actually determine, you know, what you're going to name the trust. And you can name the trust anything that you want, but please do not name the trust after yourself because one, you want to protect your assets. And if the trust is under your name, then they're going to know that you're associated with the trust, okay? Another thing is if you're naming like a business trust, you can use terms like LLC, corporation, co, things like that, okay? So naming the trust is important. And one thing is that you do not have to have the word trust in the name, okay? So it doesn't have to end in trust like an LLC or like Inc., like a, Inc., like a corporation, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Next, you have to actually appoint a grantor. So if you are creating an irrevocable trust, you do not want to be the grantor because the grantor has no power and no control and no beneficial interest. So you want to appoint someone else to be your grantor on paper, and then you're going to appoint yourself to be the trustee. Remember, we just learned that the trustee has all the power and all the control. The trustee is the one who operates the trust on a day-to-day basis and can choose what happens with the assets, right? If you're buying assets, if you're liquidating assets. So that's the position that you want to be in, okay? And then after that, you are going to choose or appoint your beneficiaries. So your beneficiaries, your grantor and your trustees, those can either be entities or natural persons, okay? So your beneficiary can be either another trust if you wanted to, a corporation, or it could be your children. All right, so next after that, we're actually going to create our trust document, our agreement, our contract. We're going to get it notarized. It needs to be notarized by the grantor and the trustee. Those are the two signatures plus the notarization that makes it legal. So now that it's legal, you can operate it. And what does that look like? Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to get a bank account so that you're able to fund the trust fund, okay? And you can fund it with whatever bank you decide to choose, okay? And so what that process looks like is you're going to go to the bank, you're going to give them what we call a certificate of trust, which is a notarized form that is the proof of identity of the actual trust, because they can't go to the Secretary of State's website to look up the trust. It's private. So you actually have to provide the information for the trust. So you're going to get an EIN and you're going to provide them with the trust name, and then they're going to open up a trust bank account for you. And then at that point, you're going to fund the trust. And everything that you're putting inside of the trust, you're going to consider it as a loan so that the trust estate can actually pay you back, okay? So after that, then you're going to actually transfer your assets into the trust. That is one of the most important things. You actually transferring or putting those assets into the trust, because that is what actually protects the trust, okay? That's what protects the assets, is it being in the name of the trust. So what does that look like? Well, if you have a primary residence, then what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to do a quit claim deed so that you can remove yourself as the owner of that property, right? We have property. We are like so, intentional about building wealth and getting assets, but we never ask ourselves, how is that house going to be transferred into my child's name? And so right now, today, if you didn't wake up tomorrow, then your children will have to go to court because that house is in your personal name. You don't want that to happen. And so that's why you want your assets to be in the trust, okay? So transferring your assets by deeding it over from your personal name into the name of the trust is the absolute most important step, okay? So next, your trust can actually protect your assets and protect you from all of these things. It can protect you from heavy taxation, from bankruptcy, from divorce, from probate, from foreclosures and lawsuits, right? And it's super important because you want to set up the trust not only for asset protection, but also to remain private. Because a lot of us, what we're doing is we're out here using our personal name, we're attaching our social security to everything, but we can actually use the trust and the EIN in order to, go out here and acquire property or even just day-to-day, actions and transactions. So let's talk about asset protection. Let's talk about divorce, right? Because a divorce is a transfer of wealth. A lot of people don't know that, but it is actually a lawsuit between two spouses. And so generally, everything that is in your personal name is going to be included into the divorce. So the way that you can protect your assets is by having a trust and putting those assets into a trust, because the trust is separate from you. The trust is separate from your spouse. So anything that is owned by the trust cannot be pulled into that divorce. So that is how you're going to protect yourself in the event that that happens, right? And it can't be done during the divorce. It has to be done like during the life of the marriage or before the marriage, okay? So another thing is lawsuits, right? Let's just say that you are an entrepreneur, you have an LLC. Well, you are the owner of that LLC. So it's easy for people to find you. All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website to be able to find you. And if they wanted to sue you, then they can, easily go after your business, right? So if they sue your business and you lose that lawsuit and that business is not able to cover that judgment, then what can happen is the judge can decide to pierce through that corporate veil, that protection, because the LLC clearly says limited liability. A lot of people, they don't think about that. They don't know that their liability is limited. It doesn't say no liability, right? So with that being said, that means that they can actually come after the owner of that business. So that means that they can come after you and they can seize your assets, they can garnish your wages, and you don't want that to happen. You want to protect yourself. So you want a first layer of protection between you and your business. And that is going to be a business trust, which you can use as a holding company in order to be able to protect you, so that if there was a lawsuit, then they would go after the business trust and not you. So that's why a trust can actually help you when it comes to protecting your assets. The next one I want to talk about is probate, because probate is absolutely inevitable. All of us are going to end up in probate if we have a will. All of us are going to end up in probate if we don't have our affairs in order. All of us are going to end up in probate if we don't have our assets in the name of a trust. So a trust is actually the only way to avoid probate. There's no other way to avoid probate, okay? With that being said, what's going to happen is, let's just say that you have assets, right? Well, those assets are in your personal name. So if you had a will and you didn't wake up tomorrow, then that means that your state is going to issue you an estate. So they're actually going to create that trust entity for you and assign it and put your name on it, okay? And then all of your assets are going to be transferred into that revocable trust. And that means that your creditors can now go after your estate. So if you had student loan debt, credit card debt, car loan debt, then those debtors or those creditors can go after your estate, okay? So all of your assets are now going to go into this estate, and what's going to happen is going to go into probate court, and a probate attorney is going to have to represent your estate. So now that's court fees, that's attorney fees, and the creditors, the judge is going to pay your creditors first, then pay the attorneys and pay the courts, and whatever is left over is what your family gets. And so you want to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can avoid your family going through that whole process. Because one thing is for sure is that that house that you live in, that house is going to be there. That house is going to outlive you. So you need to put yourself in a position to where you can, protect your family from having to go through probate. Probate can take months. It can also take years, okay? So you actually creating your own estate is going to avoid that entire process, because now if you decided to not wake up tomorrow, guess what happens? If everything is in the trust, there is no transfer that needs to happen, because everything's going to remain in the name of the trust and your children are the beneficiaries, okay? So let's move on to the wealth building formula, you guys. So I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, credit, and invest, okay? So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is structure, okay? So this is what I recommend. I recommend that you guys have 3 trusts: a business trust, a private family trust, and a tax exempt trust, okay? So with the business trust, you can actually operate it 2 ways. You can operate it as a holding company to where it's going to be non-operational, right? So it's not going to have products or services and be out here in the market. And all it's going to do is it's going to own your LLCs or your corporations, right? Those are assets. So the business trust is going to own those assets. The other way is if you didn't have an LLC or a corporation, then you can operate the business trust so you can have employees, you can actually offer products and services, and you can run the business trust like a regular business, okay? So those are your two options when it comes to the business trust, okay? So let's just say that you have an LLC, right? And now that LLC is in your personal name. What you need to do is you need to amend your articles of organization, remove yourself as the owner, and put the business trust as the owner. So now the business trust is going to be your holding company, okay? That's that asset protection that we're talking about. So now when it comes to your revenue, right, the LLC, let's just say it generated $100,000. Well, that $100,000, what it can do is it's a pass-through entity, okay? And so that money can be passed down to the owner. And so if the business trust is the owner, that 100,000 is going to go to the business trust. And now your LLC, it has a zero tax liability, okay? So now that 100,000 is at the business trust level. And what's going to happen is you're going to do your regular deductions, okay? So let's just say that you have, 20,000 in business expenses. So now you have 80,000 left. And so a business trust is a for-profit entity. It does have to pay taxes. It files a 1041. Okay. So with that being said, you're going to have to pay taxes on that $80,000. And a business trust or a trust in general is taxed at 38%. It's taxed really high because they don't want you to use these types of entities, okay? So with that being said, with a trust, one of the things that I love about it is that you are going to spend the money first, and then you're going to be taxed on what's left over. So out of that 100,000, we spent 20, 80 is left over. And so now what we're going to do, instead of us paying taxes on the 80,000, we are going to distribute it to the beneficiary. The beneficiary of the business trust is going to be the family trust because the money has to flow from your family, from your business to your family so that you could, pay your mortgage, car note, gasoline, groceries, all these things. So once that money is distributed, the 80,000 to the family trust, now it has the business trust has a zero tax liability, okay? So now that 80,000 is at the private family trust level. Well, what's going to happen is you spend the money first and you're taxed on what's left over. So out of that 80,000, let's just say that you spent 70 of it. So now there's 10,000 that's left. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to file taxes and you're going to have to pay the 38% on the 10,000. Or what you can do is you can donate it to your ministry trust, to your tax-exempt nonprofit trust. And at that point, you're done paying taxes because the tax-exempt trust does not file federal taxes, okay? Because everything that's coming in is considered a donation. So at the private family trust level, you're at a zero tax liability, and then at the tax exempt trust level, you don't pay any federal taxes, okay? So am I dropping some gems? Put some fireballs in the chat if you guys are getting some good information. We are 30 minutes in, so let me take a look at the chat. That's what I need to look at. Let's see here. All right, I see some fireballs. Okay. All right, perfect. So we are going to move on. All right, I got some fireballs on Instagram. Super excited. If you are off of mute, please mute yourself. All right, so let me just tell you a little bit more about the tax exempt trust, and then we're going to move on, guys, okay? So with the tax exempt trust, you could call it a lot of things. You could call it a church, a ministry, a faith-based organization. It is actually designated as a 508c1a, okay? And it is the only mandatory exception to not having to file for a 501c3. So you're automatically tax exempt. You don't have to pay any federal taxes. You don't have to file. You do not have to report of your books or your records or anything to the IRS, okay? So it is designed to fulfill the separation between church and state, which is super important, okay? With this faith-based organization, your faith could be in anything. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be educational based as well, okay? One thing that I like about this is that it can actually help you reduce your taxes. And the way that that's going to happen is, let's just say that you're a W-2 employee, right? You're going to donate to your entity, to your ministry trust. So if you are a W-2 employee, your gross income, you can donate up to 60% of your income, okay? So if you make, let's just say you make $100,000, you can donate up to $60,000 to your ministry trust. And then instead of you being taxed on $100,000, you're only going to be taxed on $40,000 because you donated 60. So just imagine you not having to give half of your income away anymore to the IRS, right? And doing it legally and lawfully, right? Because these things are available in order for you to tap in, okay? So now let's move on to credit. So two things that you want to do. One, you can qualify for nonprofit grants, right? We're talking about a nonprofit tax exempt trust. You can qualify for nonprofit grants, and you can use those grants for anything that is going to fulfill your ministry, okay? So that can aid in your funding. So next is credit, right? I told you guys a trust can build credit. So we have personal credit, but you want to be able to leverage a second credit profile. So you're going to build business credit with your trust so that you can use OPM, other people's money. You want to use it, you want to use the bank's money in order to build wealth. You want to build credit so that you can qualify for higher lines of credit with your business trust and tap in, okay? So that is going to be extremely important when we're talking about this wealth building formula. Let's move on to invest. There's two investments that I highly recommend when we're talking about building generational wealth, when we're talking about creating your trust estate, okay? So the first one is an index universal life insurance policy, okay? With this policy is supposed to be used when you are living, okay? It is a life insurance policy. It's not supposed to be used when you are dead. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm going to die and my kids are going to get, $2 million for the death benefit. But no, there's a lot of living benefits with this IUL policy, okay? So what you're going to do is you are going to use it, one, to pay yourself first, okay? With this policy, it actually builds cash value. So that means that the money that you are putting into this policy, because it's an IUL, it's going to mirror the market. So it's not going to be in the market. It's going to be risk-free, but it's going to mirror the market. So what's going to happen is the carrier is going to match whatever the index is doing. So if it's the S&P 500 is doing like 9%, then whatever you have in your cash value is going to earn 9%. It's going to earn compound interest, okay? Which is extremely important when we're talking about building wealth. So what you're going to do is you are going to pay yourself first. The way that works is right now, let's just say we're W-2 employees. And when we get our paycheck, the IRS already took theirs, Medicare, Social Security, 401k, everyone already took their cut. And by the time it reaches your bank account, you get the leftovers. And what do you do with it? You actually pay your mortgage, you buy groceries, you pay your car note, put gas in the car, all of these things. And whatever is left over, you leave it inside of your checking account, right? So that is this vicious cycle, this rat race that we're in. And what you need to do is, instead of paying yourself last by leaving the leftovers inside of your checking account, what you need to do is pay yourself first. The way you're going to do that is by depositing that check into your index universal life insurance policy so that you can earn compound interest on that money. So let's just say 5,000 came in. It's Friday, it's payday. Well, what's going to happen is, instead of you paying your mortgage, your groceries, and all of these things that we do first, you're going to deposit it into your IUL, and then you're going to borrow it back out. That is one of the most beautiful things about this policy, is that you can actually take out a loan because this is a liquid asset. And we're in the business of accumulating assets. So because it's a liquid asset, they're going to see that you have, 5,000 in your cash value. And so now the insurance company is going to issue you a loan for the 5,000. So you just deposited your paycheck, the 5,000 in there, and you borrowed it back out, but you borrowed it out from the insurance company's money. They did not touch your 5,000. Your 5,000 is going to stay in your cash value, and it's going to be making whatever the market is, right? It's going to be earning compound interest, and you're going to take out a loan from the insurance company so that you're able to pay your mortgage, put, food on the table, and everything that you need to do with your paycheck. So that is the concept of infinite banking and you paying yourself first. And that's how you're going to build wealth and build generational wealth effectively, okay? So with this policy, it's going to be owned by your trust, by your private family trust. So it's going to be owned by your family trust. The family trust is going to be the payer of the policy, and the family trust is going to be the beneficiary of the policy. All right. So now let's fast forward to the next investment that I recommend, which is real estate, right? So we were just talking about building credit with our business trust and leveraging OPM. So let's just say that you got a line of credit with your business trust for $50K. What you're going to do is you're going to strip that credit card, right? You're going to take out that $50K. Now that $50K is sitting in your bank account. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to deposit it into your IUL policy. Then you're going to borrow it back out. So now the insurance carrier just gave you the $50,000. And now what you're going to do is you're going to use it as down payment for real estate, right? You can get a real estate investment loan with a trust. Generally, it's 80% for the mortgage, and you need that other 20%. Well, that $50,000 from the credit card is going to serve as that 20% down payment. So you literally just bought real estate for zero down because you didn't use any of your own money. And it's powerful because that $50,000 is working in your insurance policy and it's working in real estate, in that investment property. So now you have that money working 2 times for you, and you have 2 assets for your trust, because you want to put yourself in a position to where your trust can sustain itself, right? It's an estate. You don't want to be pouring in your W-2 money into that estate. You want it to be able to sustain itself, have its own assets, and you just control the assets. All right, so let's move on. All right, so how do we actually transfer the wealth? You need to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. Own nothing but control everything, right? That is the definition of stewardship. So you want to move away from ownership. It's cute that our name is on our house, but that's not going to serve us when our kids have to go to court in order to fight to keep our house. So what's going to happen is you need to now be a good steward of your wealth by focusing on controlling the asset, right? That house is going to outlive you. All you need to do is control it while you are alive. And you are going to do that by putting that house into the name of the trust. You be the trustee of the trust, meaning that you have full control over that asset, okay? Next is with the trust, right? You're going to issue TCUs, trust certificate units. So just like stock certificates are representing ownership of a company, TCUs represents beneficial interest in a trust, okay? So with the TCUs, you're going to issue them to the beneficiaries. And it's going to represent, how much they're going to receive in assets or distribution. So let's just say out of those 100 TCUs, I issued 20 to my son. And so now this month I'm going to do a distribution of 100,000. Well, my son is going to receive $20,000, okay? So TCUs are extremely important. The next thing is preservation, right? So when we're talking about transferring assets, one thing is that if all of your assets are in the trust, and if anything were to happen to you, there is no transfer that needs to happen because everything is going to remain in the name of the trust, okay? So if you didn't wake up tomorrow, there's nothing that your children need to do because they're the beneficiaries, and the trust is going to stay intact as the owner of all of these assets. Your bank account with the cash in it, your car, your house, your policies, everything. So let's talk about preservation. A lot of us, we are so intentional about building generational wealth, but we do not put things in place in order to preserve the wealth. You have seen it to where these families, right, they have millions and billions of dollars, and by the second and third generation, those beneficiaries, those heirs, have literally wasted all of the money, and there's no longer any wealth in the family. Do you want that to happen to you and your family? No, because we work so hard for the $1 million. We work so hard for the house and the car and all these things. And so we want to put things in place to where the wealth that we're creating today is going to be preserved. The way that we do that is by way of insurance. I was just telling you guys about the Index Universal Life Insurance. So what you're going to do is the trust is going to be the owner of the policy. Like I said, the trust is going to be the payer and the beneficiary of the policy. You are a human asset when it comes to the trust. You are the trustee. You're the one operating the trust. The trust cannot operate by itself. So don't you think that you should be insured? Since you're the MVP, you're the most valuable person associated with that estate? Absolutely. Because if anything were to happen to you, the trust is going to be devastated. The trust is going to experience a major loss, and the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. So what you are going to do is you are going to insure, or the trust is going to insure every single person associated with that estate. So meaning all of the trustees and all of the beneficiaries, okay? And if anything were to happen to the human capital, then the trust is compensated, right? So we're talking about the beneficiaries that you have right now and any of the future beneficiaries. So that means your grandchildren's grandchildren, right? And so every single baby that is born into the trust estate is going to be issued a policy, okay? That is what we call a trust fund baby. We need to normalize trust fund babies in our community, right? So with that being said, now the trust has taken out a policy on that baby and is paying that premium. Let's just say that that beneficiary now is 18 years old and they either want to buy their first property, right? What they can do is they can go out, they can get a mortgage, and they can start paying, that mortgage payment to the company, right? That's the normal way of doing it. Or instead of going through that whole process where now they got to pay, high interest rates and they're stuck in a 30-year mortgage, what they can do is they can actually take out a loan for that $250,000 that they need for their first house. And what's going to happen is the trustee is going to actually, write out a promissory note saying that that beneficiary is going to pay back the trust the 250,000 plus 3% interest for whatever the term is. The term could be 5 years, 10 years, 15, whatever you as the trustee decide with the beneficiaries. Okay. So with that being said, now instead of the beneficiary paying the mortgage company, is now he or she is going to pay the trust estate. So the trust estate is now making interest, right? Which is a beautiful thing. But let's just say that that beneficiary decided to default on that mortgage, on that loan. It actually was a risk-free loan because the money for that house, for their first house, did not come from the trust fund account. The money came from their insurance policy. So what happened was the trustee went and took out a loan against their IUL policy. That loan was issued to a check, right, was issued from their policy. So it actually came from the insurance company's money and reserves to the trust fund. And then from there, the trustee wrote a check for that $250,000 and handed it to the beneficiary. So since that loan doesn't need to be paid back because it's going to be deducted from the death benefit, it became a risk-free loan, and the trust is going to be replenished once that beneficiary passes away. So this is how you preserve your wealth, by putting an insurance policy on everyone associated with the policy. Okay, that's preservation of wealth. That's what you need to implement for you and your families. That's what we call generational wealth. So these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? Okay, so that book is going to teach you guys about how to actually incorporate trust and insurance. They go together. It's a match made in heaven. You're building generational wealth. You're breaking generational curses. This is how you do it, by utilizing these two most powerful tools. The next book is The Art of Passing the Buck, volume 1 and 2, which is going to teach you about trusteeship, how to actually operate a trust. Then Family Wealth, which teaches you guys how to build a family office, right? How to run your family like a business. Come on now. We need to run it like you're the CEO of your family. You need to run it like a business. And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust. I told you there's hundreds of trusts. So you need to choose the one that's right for you, your family, and your business, okay? I told you the ones that I recommend. So those are definitely the ones that you need within your structure. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys what I want you to do is take action on the information that I provided tonight, because this is going to make you put yourself in a position to where you get restructured the right way so that you're able to protect your assets, reduce your taxes, and operate efficiently and effectively, especially with these new laws coming in. So what I want to do is show you a quick video of a trustee that actually took action on the information that I'm providing.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. Don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions. Things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you.
All right, so let's work together. I do have a program where I teach you guys how to set up these 3 trusts, okay? So there's 3 options. You can either do it yourself. So if you do it yourself, it is an online course. So you get access to the portal, which has 42 video modules, okay? And I will show you what that looks like in just a minute. And so you get access to the templates for the 3 trusts. I'm giving you the foundation that you need in order to set up these 3 trusts, okay? You get lifetime access to the program. So if you want to set up a trust 3 years from now, you have access to do that. You get access to the ebooks that I've mentioned earlier in this call and resources, which is all of the templates that you need to operate a trust. And we have a private Facebook community with almost 200 trustees have gone through this entire process, right? They have set up their bank account. They have transferred their homes into trust. They are protecting their assets, utilizing holding companies. The entire thing is phenomenal. So the course is $997. The next option is Done With You, and that is for people who need the accountability, who don't want to do it themselves, who want to make sure that everything is done correctly. Okay, this is a delicate, situation. You are creating an estate here, and so it consists of 5 group Zoom calls. So we do it Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Monday, we set up the business trust together. Tuesday, we set up the private family trust together. Wednesday, we set up the ministry trust together, and then we become ordained ministers for our trust. Thursday, we go through how to establish business credit, board meetings, and promissory notes, and applying for the EIN with the IRS. And then on Friday, we transfer assets. That's your house, your car, your business. And then we go through infinite banking, okay? So you get lifetime access to the workshops. We do it once a month. The next workshop is January 8th to the 12th. And with that being said, you get recordings to all the previous workshops. You get lifetime access to attend all of the future workshops, you guys. So this is if you want to, like I said, if you need that accountability, but if you want to be able to have your hand held through the process and to ask questions live. So the workshop is $2,500, and then the last option is do it one-on-one, where we do it privately, right? So if your schedule doesn't permit for you to do the workshops, which are recorded, or if you just need that individualized support and you want to make sure that everything is done like correctly, you have a complex structure, multiple businesses, multiple assets, then the private sessions are definitely for you, and they're $5,000, okay? So this is my contact information. You guys go to wealthytrustee.com. You guys can text the community line where you received this notification. You can email me and visit me on social media. So now what I want to do is I want to show you guys what a trust looks like and what the program looks like, okay? So let's see here. So this is what a trust looks like. So everything that you see in red is what we're going to be customizing. You have to customize this trust specifically for your business, for your family, or for your ministry, okay? And like I said, it's a contract. So we are actually going to be customizing this contract and making it your own and notarizing it, legalizing it. So now that you can operate this entity, okay? So this is what the type of trust that you guys are going to be setting up. And then this is what the program looks like. So like I told you guys, there's 42 video modules. Everything is super thorough. So you can definitely do it on your own if you choose that option, okay? So first we go through trust entities. So you guys learn what is a trust, the different parties involved, right? So the trustee, beneficiary, successors. You learn how to set up the ministry trust. You learn how to set up the private family trust. You learn how to set up the business trust. And then we go through tax strategies, okay? Because you got nonprofits and for-profits within your structure. So your taxes are going to be strategic, okay? So you learn about the different tax strategies, and then we go through asset protection, where you're going to take an inventory of your assets so you know what's going to go inside of the trust and what's going to stay out of the trust. And then you're going to learn how to open up a bank account, brokerage account, and how to transfer almost all of your assets, okay? And then lastly, we go through wealth creation, where you learn how to build business credit so you can leverage OPM. So now you can invest in the stock market, putting into IULs and real estate. And then lastly, we have all the resources that you need in order to operate your trust. So your board meetings, filings, your promissory notes, all of your trust templates, the forms that you need for taxes, everything. When I tell you thorough, that's really what I mean. And then last, those ebooks, right? Because you want additional education and you want resources from other trustees that have been doing it for decades. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to pass the baton to my partner, Marvin Mitchell, and he actually has been a advisor for over 17 years. Hold on, let me see. One second. All right, I see I have a question. Kima, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay, yes. I wanted to know, I do have a LLC set up already. I've had it since 2018, but I've never filed like the yearly reports or whatever. Um, so I owe like, I don't know how much money I owe since I haven't filed since 2018. Wanted to know if I could actually start, because I built a whole brand behind that LLC. And I wanted to know if I can start a new trust under that same name and not have to pay all that money to my state.
That is actually a really good question. And absolutely, yes, you can actually create a trust under the same name and roll it in and make it seem like it was the same entity, even though it's a different entity. So if you have an LLC and you want to dissolve that LLC, or that LLC has already been dissolved, then you can rename it into a new entity, which is the trust, and continue operation.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
have one more question, one more quick
absolutely,
question.
Ema, absolutely.
So with the ministry trust, I just wanted to know if we had to become ordained ministers or.
So
Mhm.
So it depends on how you customize your trust and if you put it in the body of your trust, okay? So the trust that I provide, it does say that the trustee is an ordained minister, and it literally takes 5 minutes the way that I teach you how to do it. So you can actually become ordained and then you can do training later. So I walk you through that whole process, but like I said, it takes 5 minutes and they will ship you your certificate.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. All right. Let's see. Next we have Michael.
Hey, Christina.
Hey,
Thanks
how
for
are you?
the information.
You're welcome.
So I am here in Canada, and I remember seeing a YouTube video with you in Dubai, saying that people can outside or international can have a trust, set up a trust and all of that. So with that, I'm asking if from Canada, a trust can be set up the way you're explaining it here.
So you can the trusts that I provide are domestic, so you can use it in the United States and US territories. So what you would need is an international trust, okay? So right now I don't provide international trust, but I will be including it in my program in 2024. And so you can use international trust, anywhere, as long as those countries, as long as they you are able to. So, yeah, so that's what I have. But there are other types of trust because I've done research for Canada. So you can use trust in Canada.
Another question, if you have access to a US Social Security number, would it be easier to set it up as if you were living in the United States if you have a US Social Security number?
So, the thing about it is that you're using the trust to protect your assets, And so if it's a domestic trust, your assets need to be, within the country. In order for it to be like fully protected and for you to operate it to the best of its ability. So even if you set up the trust here, because you do not have to be a US citizen in order to set up these trusts. So you can set it up. But like I said, it's designed to be used in the United States. So, I mean, Canada is one of our, sister countries, and it's very similar, but I personally haven't gone through that process, and none of my students have, so I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction.
Basically, thank you. So basically, is to do an international trust if I'm going to do something similar to what you're explaining here.
Yeah, you want to use an international trust because it's not going to be restricted to just one country. You can use it all over.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're so welcome. Hold on for me 1 second. Okay, anyway, so what I'm going to do is we're going to pause Q&A for right now, and I'm going to bring on my partner, Marvin Mitchell. So he is a financial advisor with more than 17 years of experience, and he's going to briefly go over infinite banking with us and how you could build wealth with this strategy. So Marvin, you have the floor. Thank you so much. Let's see, where are you at?
He's muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Marvin, if you're talking, but I can't even see you. Let's see, spotlight. Okay, yeah. So you're on mute. Okay, no problem.
All right. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm having an issue with Zoom. I can't even see myself, but that's okay. If you all can see me, let me do this. Okay. So can you all see me? Because I can't see you yet.
Yes, yes, we can see you.
Okay, cool. Let me do one more thing because I do want to see you all. Give me 1 second. Okay, so not working. It's all good. So today, what I want to make sure that I talk to you all about is an IUL and life insurance. So this is one of the number one assets that you want to get when you actually get your trust. So when you do get your trust, the reason why the life insurance is great because this is a way that you build generational wealth. This is also a way that you can multiply your assets multiple times. So to give you an example, the reason why you want to use life insurance properly structured, index universal life or even whole life, is that life insurance properly structured will allow your money to grow tax deferred. It also will allow your money to grow tax-free. It will protect you against creditor protection. Of course, it's a tax-free death benefit, which will go to your trust when you pass away. Because it's irrevocable, it won't be taxed, not just the life insurance, but also estate taxes. It also won't be taxed. So that's one of the cool things about it. Another great thing about it is you can use it to create wealth. So you can actually borrow against it to do other investments. When you borrow against it, you don't even have to pay it back. Because if you don't pay it back, it's subtracted from your death benefit when you die. So it's a really cool thing. The reason why I say you can make your money work for you 2 to 3 times off the same dollar is if I actually put money into a life insurance policy first, build up a cash value, that cash value will continue to grow as if I never touched it. So when I borrow against it, it still continues to grow. So that's a pretty cool thing. When I borrow against it, it will continue to grow. And also, oh, there we go. I can see y'all now. So when I borrow against it, it will continue to grow. And also, when I when I buy the asset, I'm making money off the life insurance and I'm making money off the asset. So I'm making money 2 times. And if I go out and get business funding, I can actually buy an asset with my funding and then I pay it off with my life insurance policy. Now I just made money 3 times. I made money on the life insurance, I got all my points, and I made money on the asset. Let's say that asset was real estate and that asset grows. You put the asset, of course, in your trust as well. And then you can actually borrow from that. I'm sorry, you can actually do a home equity line of credit on that property and buy another property. And now you just made your money work 4 times off the same dollar. So what I try to teach people that instead of using cash, put your money into the life insurance and borrow against that first. When you use cash, it's gone forever. So let me share this with you. Okay. So to pay cash, you need to first save the cash, right? And once you save the cash, now you got to pay taxes. Then you got to drain it. Then you got to drain the tank, killing your compound interest. So what that means is, what that means is, you pay cash, it's gone. You got to pay taxes. How do you retain all of that money? So you retain it by putting it into a cash value. Remember, the cash value continues to grow uninterrupted as if you never touched it. So look at this green. Let's say you were saving $25,000 a year. Let's say you were making 8%. And let's say that you built it up and then you drained the tank every 5 years. Look at what happens. It's a difference between you having, you spent the same things, but it's a difference of you having $3 million inside of your cash value versus only having 183,000 if you use your cash and you kept spending your cash. That's a difference of 2,900,000. How many of y'all want to have an extra 2,900,000 simply by restructuring how you save? What if you can make that purchase without emptying the tank? It will allow your cash value to continue to grow. If you don't use your own capital, then whose do you use? You use collateral from a financial institution, which is like an insurance company. So this is how it works. This is the financial institution. You go to the financial institution and say, I want to borrow against my cash value. Then you buy the asset and then you pay it back. So it's 3 things that can increase your borrowing capacity: contributions, internal growth, and also reducing your loan. So you don't have to reduce your loan, but I tell you to reduce your loan because by reducing your loan, what it does, it allows you to borrow more in the future. So you want it to be tax-deferred growth. You want tax-free distributions, competitive returns, high contributions, deductible contributions, collateral opportunities. You want it to be safe. You don't want to lose. You want a guaranteed loan option, no credit checks, unstructured loan payments, which means you don't have to pay it back, and also liquidity, use, and control of your money. So we like to use permanent insurance as our private reserve. Why? Because you go to the insurance company, you borrow against it. Now you get an interest-only loan. You buy the asset. You pay it back non-structured if you pay it back. Then they're going to reduce the loan on your account. When they reduce the loan, you have more to borrow against. Permanent life insurance, when designed and utilized properly, can provide that stable growth. So let's say you can get a $500,000 death benefit. You got a minimum and you got a maximum. Who determines the minimum amount? It's the insurance company. Because they are actually looking at what's the least amount that you can actually buy. What's the most life insurance that you can buy for the cheapest that's going to be profitable? Who do you think determines the maximum amount? It's the government. Why would the government be concerned? Because there's infinite product designs. Rich people used to pour a lot of money into these policies, but the government realized that they don't get any tax money on that. The government only cares about taxes. So in the 80s, they created 401ks, IRAs, SEP, and 403bs. These are qualified plans so that they can charge you extra taxes. It's not just your savings vehicle, it's their savings vehicle too. If you overfund your life insurance policy, they're going to make it a MEC. That's a modified endowment contract. So the minimum, let's say you can put $500 into a life insurance policy and get a $500,000 death benefit, or a $10,000 for the same $500,000, right? What is the $500 called? That's term. What is term good for? Only the death benefit. It doesn't accumulate a cash value. So why would I put $10,000 into a policy that I could get for $500? And as you all can tell, I've lost my voice, so please excuse me. Tax-deferred growth, tax-free distributions, competitive returns, high contributions, additional benefits, the ability to borrow, collateral opportunities, it's safe, no loss provision, guaranteed loan options, unstructured loan payments, liquidity use and control. So when you structure this, you want the lowest amount of death benefit for the highest amount of cash value. This is what we will help you to do. So we want to avoid it from being a MEC, and we want to make it to where it's the maximum efficient contract, which means we want to put it as close to that line as possible without you going over, right? This is going to allow you to take advantage of those things. Now, once you fill that tank up, you can keep accelerating those payments, and you can use that extra cash flow to fulfill more tanks. I just opened my 7th policy. I have index universal life and I have whole life. Index universal life, it's like, let's say if it's 12%. Let's see. So let's say the cap is 12, market goes up by 5, you can make 5, goes up by 10, you can make 10, goes up by 12, you can make 12, but if the market goes down, you can't lose. So that's one of the cool things about that, and that's the reason why Christina likes the IUL. The whole life, you can borrow from it quicker, and with the whole life, you earn a fixed rate of return, let's say 5%. So you don't get as much growth potential, but you do get the ability to borrow quicker. So it's going to be different depending on who you are, right? So that is how it works. That is how the cash value works. That is how the life insurance works. When you couple it with a trust, it becomes truly amazing. Because again, the owner can be the trust, the beneficiary can be the trust. You can be the insured, or somebody else can be the insured. So you can like make this thing work to the best of your ability. Now, let's say I had $100,000 and it was earning 5% in cash. The next year I have 105,000. Let's say I got 100,000 in my cash value earning 5%, but this time I borrowed 30,000. How much do I have in my cash value the next year? Still 105,000 because I never touched it. It continues to grow as if I never touched it. So if it's going to grow as if I never touched it, it's going to do the same thing whether I borrow against it or not. Should I borrow against it or shouldn't I borrow against it? What do you all think? If you don't use it, you lose it. Now, if I am going to borrow against it, do I want to borrow against it and buy an asset, or do I want to buy a liability? You want to buy an asset, right? Because you want to make your money multiply and grow several times off the same dollar. So I am offering, setting up your trust with Christina. Just because you're working with Christina, I am offering the ability for you to take advantage of a free complimentary call with our team. Now, that's a $497 value, absolutely complimentary to you. All you have to do is click on the link that they sent you, or the link is also in the information that you get from Christina, and that's wealthcreationcall.com. So any questions? Do you all have any questions right now? If you do have a question about the insurance part, let me know, and I'll take a minute to answer a couple of your questions.
I have a question real quick.
Okay, I don't know who is this.
This is Kima. I'm sorry,
Okay,
and I've been following you for quite some time now. I've seen you on the Breakfast Club, the Breakfast Club, and the Ask Cash interviews, and partnered with Christina is just a 2-for-1. It's awesome.
Ain't that an amazing connection?
Yeah, so I wanted to know, so once we finish with her course and then we get the complimentary call, is there an ongoing like extra course with you, or is it just the complimentary call and that's it? You get us set up, and how does
No,
that work?
no, once you work with us, we're gonna serve your account. So that means you'll have, check-ins, et cetera.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Amazing questions. What else do we have?
You have some questions in the chat, Marvin. The first one says, could we borrow from the cash value and the insurance company?
Oh, so when you borrow from the cash value, you are borrowing from the insurance company. So you don't actually, when people say borrow against your policy, you're actually not borrowing money from your policy. You're actually borrowing from the insurance company that takes a lien out on a policy for the amount that you borrow. That makes sense?
All right. And the next question, he said yes, or she, Cam. Cam said yes. And the next question is, how much on average does it cost to establish an IUL?
It depends. So it's not necessarily the cost. A lot of it depends on your health and the term, how long you're funding it. When you're funding a policy, the minimum that I like to do is somewhere around $250 a month. But I want you to understand that there's a lot of money that you can find that you could be losing unknowingly and unnecessarily, which is actually going to make it easier for you to fund more in your policy. So what I mean by that is, like, I've been able to help people who thought they could only do $250 a month find an extra $2,000 a month they didn't even know they had, because they were overfunding their policy. They were doing a lot of they were paying extra toward their house. They were being inefficient with their spending. So all I would say to you is come in thinking about what's the most I can do, because remember, you can borrow against this policy. Let's see. How soon after establishing the policy can you borrow? As soon as sometimes sooner than even 30 days. I say 30 days, but sometimes you can even do it quicker than 30 days. That's a great question. How much on average? Any other questions? Oh, Jewel Jackson.
Hello, thank you. So the whole idea would be to put, like, if a person has W-2 income, to
Mhm.
funnel it through your IUL and then borrow
Oh.
against it and pay your bills out that way, correct?
So, Jewel, you are thinking. Are you in this industry, Jewel?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm
Now,
not.
you told me, because you are thinking. That is good. So let me y'all ever heard the term like pay yourself first? If you've ever heard pay yourself first, when people think of pay yourself first, they're thinking about funding their 401k or something, then the rest of it go toward bills. But what if you took pay yourself first to a whole nother level? What if pay yourself first meant, what if it meant you took most of your W-2 check and you funded the life insurance policy first? Let's say you make $100,000 a year and you took 80,000 and you funded the life insurance policy with the 80,000 over that year. But then you borrowed against it to pay your bills. Now your bills are gone, but instead of you only having 10% earning like 5%, instead of you having like $10,000 earning 500 a year, you got 80,000 earning 5% or more per year. So over the span of that 10-year time frame, instead of you having $80,000, you now have 800,000 that's tax free. So that is one of the strategies that I do use. So that is a powerful, powerful strategy. All right. Any other questions? So what I mean is, let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So All right. So this green represents your cash because you do have to fund the cash value first. This green represents your cash. You're going to go and you're going to say, this is green represents your cash and your cash value. You're going to go and say to the insurance company and say, I want to borrow against the money that I have in my cash value. They're going to say, okay, so if I borrow this much, the amount that I borrow represented by the yellow. So I went to the insurance company and they're saying, okay, we're going to give you this money, but you're not going to have to take it out of your account. So we're going to use this account as collateral. Because we only use this account as collateral, it's going to continue to grow as if I never touched it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to borrow. Now, if I decide to pay it back, now it's going to decrease that lien, decrease that collateral. So now I have all of the money again, and it grew more. So remember how I said earlier that there's ways that you can grow your cash value. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, remember I said that, right? So I said you could grow the cash value. Here we go. Okay. The collateral, when you decrease it, when the green account grows, and when they pay dividends, that's how you grow the cash value in your account. So that's what we want to do for you. We want to grow the cash value so that you can have all of these benefits. How do you and insurance companies determine the value of the policy? Well, if you get a term, they just determine the least amount you can put in, and they give you the highest death benefit, but they don't give you any other benefits. They determine it based on a pro rata, a proportion. Like you can put in as much as you want to, but there has to be a certain proportion that's geared toward the death benefit and a portion that's geared toward the cash value. So, for example, you want the least amount of death benefit and the highest amount of cash value. If you put too much toward the cash value, it'll be taxed. So they determine it. There are certain MEC limits that's way too complicated to explain. But if you do want more, all you have to do is increase the death benefit. The reason why is that you really pay fees based on the death benefit, not based on your cash value. So when you do it this way, you actually, what am I saying? When you do it this way, agents actually take 70% less commission because most of the commission is going, most of your money is going toward you, the cash value, and not the death benefit. Most agents do it wrong because they're going to put it all toward the death benefit. Why? Because it's hard to get a man to understand something that his wallet depends on him not understanding. That's number one. Number two, you have to understand that most companies don't teach their agents this because they don't want to take the commission drop as well. So that's why you have to find a good agent with integrity that's not trying to get the highest commission, but is trying to help you. And that's what we do. All right. So great questions, you all. I'm going to turn it back over to Christina. The great thing is we have a partnership that we have established that we look to help you to meet your goals and your needs. And that's what we plan to do. Looking forward to it. There you go, Christina, back to you.
So Marvin, there's another question that was on YouTube. So I'm gonna put it in the chat. Let's see here. So they was asking, what is the floor for the stock market if it crashed? The floor, so if the floor falls to 0, or if this happens, like what I guess what happens to the cash value if it hits the floor level and if we pull the money out and put it back in. I don't know. Yeah.
The floor what is the floor for the stock market if it crash? The floor is 0. You can't lose. If the market goes down, you can't lose. This is not in the stock market. It's just an index of the stock market. Your money isn't invested in stocks. It happens because your money is not actually in stocks. It's just looking at the index to determine the gain. Then we pull the money out and then the interest added to the value. So I think that answers your question. I'm having a hard time truly understanding it, But what I think you mean is how do you not lose if the stock market goes down? Because it's not in the stock market. When the market gains, let's say you gain 10%, that is your new amount. So you can never go below that amount. Even if the market loses 50% the next year, it doesn't matter. You get to keep your principal in whatever that gain was that locked in on that year. All right. Let me go back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you
thank
all.
thank you,
And
thank
also let me
you.
tell y'all, this is a good deal what Christina is offering. I spent $45,000 on my trust, and it's nowhere near as good as a trust you set up with Christina for literally a fifth of, a tenth, less than a tenth of the cost. So it's pretty amazing what she's able to do to really guide you all through this process. So, all right, Christina, back to you.
Thank you, Marvin. I appreciate it. Thank you for pouring into the community. So I am going to continue with Q&A if you have any questions. So Jewel, you have a question?
Yeah, and kind of a comment too.
All right, awesome.
So I was educated a little bit about IULs, and especially the part about when he said it going to zero, so you don't lose your money. Unlike 401k and all the other vehicles that you mentioned earlier, because if the stock market crashes, your money will crash with that. So it's better to not even match your company with 401k because it's not guaranteed. And I do taxes, or I've done taxes for years, for more than 25 years. And I've seen some of my clients, they lose all their money during the stock market crash. So instead of putting it with 401k, it's better to put it with your IUL because you're not going to lose it.
Thank you, Jewel. We appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Thank you.
that's good information. All right. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I do see some in the chat. So one person said, can I refinance my house if it's in the trust? Absolutely. So a trust can get a mortgage, a trust can do a refinance, a trust can do a home equity line of credit. So yes, you are able to do that. Let's see what other questions I have here. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat or come off mute or raise your hand if you have any questions. So Z said, what if you didn't buy your land or property yet? You can still set up your trust even though you don't have assets because you're going to acquire assets. So you want to be able to establish the owner of those assets before you buy the assets. So if you're intending on buying land or property, that is okay because you want to be able to have the trust already set up so that eventually when you get that land or that property, you can already purchase it outright with the trust if that's what you want to do. So that is good. Let's see here. This is recorded, so you can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch the recording. The link to our YouTube channel is in the chat, and go ahead and subscribe to our channel because there's a lot of good information there. The next question is, do we need a license to issue the TCUs or a specific trust? No, so every single trust is going to generate 100 trust certificate units once you add value to the trust. So once you fund it, and then the trustee is going to issue those TCUs, but you don't need any specific license for that. Let's see. I think that's it for the questions. I don't see any other questions. Let me see. Hold on. After we have a draft of our trust, all we need to do is get it notarized for it to be legal. Yeah, it needs to be notarized by the grantor and the trustee in order for it to be legal. And you can start operating it as soon as you are done with getting it notarized. Let's see here. So Ruth, hi Ruth, you have a question?
Yeah, I got many.
All right, awesome.
Let me ask you a question. Okay. So I'm disabled, but um I wanted to start a one with therapy because I got my license for it. I did the fictitious name and then I stopped everything because then my daughter brought to my attention about business trust, which I never knew about, or protecting what we have, in the family, period. So I'm trying to figure out how does that work before I do LLC or anything else with the business trust. Can I use the same name, fictitious name that I have already? Or do I rename it? First of all, how does any of that work?
Yeah, so if you have a name and you like are already using it, but it's not like associated with an entity, then you can name your trust after that name that you've been using.
Yeah, I have the fictitious name. I already paid the money for it. I didn't want to go back and have an IN number for that right there, but I didn't know if I have to go and do all of that all over again.
Yeah, no, so you can just name the trust after the fictitious name that you already have in existence and then start to operate the trust as the name of that entity.
So what about the IN number I have? Do I have to
So
go?
okay, what do you have, an EIN?
Yeah,
Yeah, so you can either do two things. You can apply for a new EIN,
okay.
and you would do it under a trust versus, did you apply as a sole prop? Would that
Yeah,
fix
so
this?
far.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you can either, you can apply for a new EIN under a trust under that name.
Okay, and then because I already paid for that part.
The EIN?
No, and you don't pay for. I'm talking about the fictitious name. But
Okay,
the, but
absolutely.
but the trust will be able to go anywhere in the state. Is that what you're saying? Like if I move to Arizona, which they told me I wanted to keep the main because everything is online. I wanted to keep everything in the Florida area, but they said I had to do a foreign entity in Arizona. So
Yep,
that
that's
means I have to
true.
do all of that all over again, but do the business trust change or does it stay the same?
Yeah, so with the business trust, you can use it in any state because the jurisdiction is the common law jurisdiction. So it's a non-statutory, so it's not restricted to you only being able to use it in one state. So if you want to use the business trust, if you set it up in Florida, you want to use it in Arizona, you can do that. And you won't have to register it as a foreign entity like you
That's
will.
what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, all
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah,
unnecessary stuff.
you don't have to do that.
So the business trust could be done here.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where.
Yeah, anywhere that you are, you choose the residency of the trust.
Okay. Yeah, that was my main concern. Now,
Mhm.
I have a business that I created for my mom. That one is physical, but I want to put it underneath for protection at this point because if something happened to her, I want to come on. I created it, but I want to bring it back to me and bring my daughter on now, as a working entity because she's getting older. Do I put that under the same business trust or I have to go to another trust?
You can put it, it's optional, so you can put it under the same if you want to. You can have multiple businesses under the same business trust. And if that business trust is non-operational, you're using it as a holding company. So you can do the one trust for all of your businesses if you wanted to.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because she's still working. I mean, she's still getting sales and stuff like that. So how does that work?
I mean, so if you want to keep it separate, you can. If you want to put it together, you can. So if
Yeah, I want to keep everything under one roof. I just want to know how does it work when we say holding.
Yeah, so the business trust will be the holding company. It could own multiple assets. So the business trust could be the owner of her business, and the business trust could be the owner of your business, and it'll protect both assets.
But she can still do business.
Yep, she's going to fully operate her business as if nothing changed.
Okay.
The only thing that changed is she will remove herself as the owner and put the business trust as the owner.
Right. And for me to keep both of them protected, I use me as the person that what did you call it?
The trustee.
The trustee, yeah, I want to be the head
Absolutely.
person over top of that because she's getting older.
The older,
So
yeah.
if something
Absolutely.
happened to it, I don't have to go through all the bull crap. It'll already be into the company
Yeah,
with me and my
absolutely.
daughter. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to alleviate.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good option.
Yeah, because I want to get them all, him and her and my dad, they all have businesses. They're not protected. I done been through enough already. I never knew they had a business. Trust, if I knew that, I would have been there. But they're getting in their 90s and stuff, and I want to carry it over so that we all have it.
Yep, there's multiple trust.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's see. Okay, there's another question. It says, can it be connected to Bitcoin in any way? Like, can the trust be connected to Bitcoin? Like the only way is if you had like, a brokerage account and you own Bitcoin, then the trust is the owner of the Bitcoin. So like, let's just say that you had a Coinbase account and it was under the name of the trust and you owned one Bitcoin. So that Bitcoin is owned by the trust. So the next question is, if you're using the Chamber of Commerce to assist you with your business growth, you can still put the business under the trust. Yeah, absolutely. There's no restrictions because you're still going to operate the business even though it's under the name of the trust, right? So yeah, you can. All right, so I think we're all done with Q&A. So thank you so much for being here, you guys. I actually do want to give you guys a gift. So for the people who take action in the next 24 hours, you guys are going to receive 20% off. So you can use the discount code TRUST20. So the website is wealthytrustee.com. It is in the chat. And then the discount code is TRUST and then the number 20, okay? So Zendra said, awesome information. Thank you guys so much for rocking with us for the last 90 minutes. And you guys have an amazing evening and take action on the information that we provided tonight, because this is how you guys are going to build generational wealth and be intentional and break those generational curses, right? You want to put yourself in a position to where you're changing the trajectory of your family. And that starts with you, because now you're going to be raising your children as trustees. And now they're going to be, your successors and taking over the trust estate. So we want to normalize trust fund babies in our community, trust in our community, having our own estates and our affairs in order. So you guys let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, you could email me, you can follow me on Instagram, and you could also text the community line that you received this Zoom link. So you guys have an amazing evening and good night.